y'all don't really want it like that. Yeah, here comes the.
Yo, what is going on, YouTube? Hope everyone is having a blessed evening here in Seattle. It is a very beautiful day outside. The weather's been nice. So for those of you guys that are out here, I hope you guys are taking the time to get some sunshine. For those of you guys that are new here, I'm your host, Calvin Domingo, aka Steezy A. Smith. And for everybody that's been rocking with me, I can't express my gratitude enough. I do want to shout out some of you guys out here in the chat, as I usually like to start these shows. We got Super Zeke the Freak in the building saying, I see the vision now. Value. I agree. We got Brody Wishard in the building saying, obviously we want to compete, but when you have a new regime come in like we are, sometimes it takes a season or two to get the right pieces in place. Stay patient, trust the process. And that was the theme of last week's show, right? I mean, you guys could even see it on the thumbnail. Trust the process. I know it's cliche. I know it doesn't hold nearly as much weight as it used to hold just because it's so overused nowadays. But look, I mean it when I say it. And like Brody just pointed out, with the new regime in place, what's the point of the Seahawks going out there and signing and splurging on a whole bunch of outside free agents, especially when Mike McDonald, a first-year head coach in the National Football League, the youngest head coach in the National Football League? I'm not saying he doesn't have a clue as to what he's doing, but everything is still so new. Everything is still so foreign. And so I wouldn't mind if it's going to take some time, perhaps a year, for him to get acclimated, fully acclimated. He still doesn't exactly know how he wants to construct the roster. And so, again, when I say trust the process, I'm not trying to be cliche, but it kind of just is that, right? Trust the process. And so, Brody, I think you bring up a great point. Thanks for taking the time to tune in. As per usual, we have a regular in the building, and Sajin saying, what's up, brother, man? Hashtag stay blessed. And we blessed by the best over here, Sajin. Thank you so much for always showing love. And, man, I love seeing you here in the chat, so thanks for taking the time. We got Not Chief all the way over in the ATL. What's up, Steezy? What's up, Not Chief? Hope you're having a great night yourself, my brother. We got Hamza back in the building. Yeah, what up, bro? I remember you from last time, Hamza, so I thank you for showing up again. It's not often that we have repeat visitors, and so Hamza, thanks for taking the time. We got Rockman Drums in the building saying, I see. And for those of you guys that might not be familiar with what he's saying, on the thumbnail, it's asking, or I'm asking, do you see the vision now? And so Rockman Drums, I think he sees the vision. I see. Brody is saying, Steezy, stay so fresh for real. Hey, man, I always got to come in with the heat, not just with the cut, of course, but with the fit, right? I got to be dressed to impress. And so, Brody, thanks for pointing that out. Not Chief is saying the Sixers ruined that phrase. I think to an extent they did, but at the same time, I think with the way that they've, constructed their team by tanking year after year, it's kind of provided a blueprint, even if it's been, let's say, teams have taken pieces of it and kind of added their own variations, if that makes sense. And so I see what you're saying, Not Chief, maybe more so on basketball. Now in football, it's a little different just because when it comes to rebuilding, the process is so much different. But Not Chief, I think you do bring up a great point. Syshin is using the up. Man, thank you. Rockman Drums is saying, I'm excited to see what happens in the draft. We still have more than a month to go until the draft, and obviously that's still a lot of time from now. But at the same time is moving so fast. We're already in the middle of March, closing in towards the end of March, and so sooner rather than later, the NFL draft is going to be here. Rockman Drums, but I echo those sentiments. I'm also excited to see what happens in the draft. Parker's in the building asking, will you be at training camp, my man? I most definitely will. I've been at training camp the last couple of years trying to cover everything that I possibly can at training camp. I try to do what I can as far as, dropping content while I'm over there at training camp, as opposed to just being there and, having fun or whatnot. But yeah, to answer your question though, Parker, I will be there. And I met a few of you guys actually at last year's training camp, and I hope to do more of the same this year and in the training camps to come. So Parker, definitely give me a holla. We got Isaac also in the building saying, what's up, Steezy? What's up, Isaac? We got another regular in the building. So Isaac, that support never goes unnoticed. Thank you for taking the time. All right, now that I've addressed some of you guys here in the chat, look, today's show is going to be all about breaking down today's signings, as you guys might or might not know. And I have it down here on the ticker below. So if you guys need a refresher, if you guys need a reminder, the Seattle Seahawks have signed 9 outside free agents, and that's not including the trade for quarterback Sam Howell. But just as a reminder, and in case you missed it, according to NFL Network's Mike Garofalo, the Seattle Seahawks have signed defensive tackle Jonathan Hankins. And with Hankins now on the roster, he instantly becomes Seattle's biggest player on the defense, at least those with NFL experience, right, at 320 pounds. I think it came down to the Dallas Cowboys and the Seattle Seahawks, and ultimately the Seattle Seahawks outbid the Dallas Cowboys. Now, it's not often you guys find the Seattle Seahawks outbidding opposing teams, just because, like we talked about at the top of the show, the Seahawks like to look for those value guys, those value signings in free agency. And so while the contract numbers haven't officially been released just yet, I'm curious to see what Jonathan Hankins is getting. It's probably going to be more than the veteran minimum, but I'm curious to see how much it's more so than the veteran minimum. So we'll see what happens in the coming days. But I think with him and his presence on that Seahawks defensive line, you guys might have seen some things on Twitter or on the internet, but Mike McDonald likes himself some big bodies on that defensive line. Obviously, Seattle's defensive line, not just last year, but in the last couple of years, has been a major, major weakness in it. We haven't seen this mammoth of a human being in Seattle since Al Woods. And obviously, when he was here, he was stopping the run, stuffing running lanes, doing his thing. And obviously, to see him go in the manner that he did last offseason, it was very unexpected. But with Jonathan Hankins coming in, he has plenty of experience. He spent time with the Colts. He spent time with the Giants. He spent time, I believe, with the Raiders. He's had a lot of success in Dallas. And the way that I look at it, he's reuniting with new Seahawks defensive coordinator, Adam Dirty. I hope I'm saying that right. I know he pronounced it correctly in his intro press conference, but Mr. Dirty, if you're seeing this, I apologize. But I think the fact that he's reuniting with his former defensive line coach in Dallas is going to bode very, very well for Jonathan Hankins moving forward. I don't think that Seattle is done just yet as far as it pertains to bringing in defensive linemen, but I absolutely love this signing. Again, we're still waiting on what the contract numbers are going to look like, but I think the fact that the Seahawks outbid the Dallas Cowboys for his services, I think that's a great sign. And so drop your guys' thoughts, drop your guys' reactions in the chat below. I'm curious to hear what you guys think about this signing. What would you grade the signing? Let me know, man. Let me know. So Rock Band Drums in the chat is saying we got a Sub-Zero fridge for all our goal line stands. LOL. Hey, no doubt. And Jonathan Hankins is definitely going to be a huge part of that. They think Hankins is 350 to 360 pounds. Oh, wow. Okay. Well, yeah, that 320, that might be a little outdated. That might have been closer to when he was drafted. He's been in the NFL for a while now. I think he was drafted back in 2013, if I'm not mistaken. And so that's probably an outdated number. But if he is closer to 350, 360 pounds, my gosh, is mountain even the proper word? I mean, mountain might even be an understatement, but Jonathan Hankins is a huge, huge body. And not only can he stop the run, but last year he showed flashes of brilliance in generating pressure up the middle and getting after the quarterback. I think he had 2 to 3 sacks. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but if he's going to add to his game towards the latter part of his career, and if now he's able to generate pressure up the middle, I mean, my gosh, this signing becomes a lot more valuable than at least initially expected, right? And so I'm hoping that with him reuniting with Mr. Dirty in Seattle, hopefully he could bring some of what we saw last year. And so, Yeah, I absolutely love the Jonathan Hankins signing. I didn't see it coming, but heck, I love it. Rockman Drums agrees. Sajin is saying happy with the moves thus far. Okay. Isaac is saying really love all the signings. Can't complain. That's right. We got Daddy Dennis in the building saying go Seahawks. Go Hawks, baby. Holy, that fool. Right. And the Dallas Cowboys posted about this on their website. So give me just a second here. I want to pull this up real quick because he missed a couple of games last year. Okay, here it is. So he suffered an ankle injury in December of 2023, missed 3 games. Dallas would lose 2 of the 3 games that Hankins didn't play in, and they gave up an average of 160.7 yards. While that's not single-handedly because of his absence, I'm sure he played a massive part in why Dallas almost gave up 161 rushing yards in those 3 games. And so, yeah, I mean, as we all know, that run defense in Seattle has been a major, major disappointment, a major weakness. And so Jonathan Hankins is definitely going to shore up some of that. Okay, Rockman Drums is agreeing. Yep, 3 sacks. Okay, there you go. Daddy Dennis, Steezy. Daddy Dennis. What's up, man? Long time no see. I think the last time I saw you in the chat was, I think, on an episode of The Bolt. So, man, Daddy Dennis, I hope you're doing well, really and truly. Thanks for taking time to tune in. That one rookie, Mike Morris, might be a sleeper for next year. Oh, no doubt. No doubt. He was definitely a guy that I was kind of hyping up last offseason. During training camp, I saw a lot of positives from a Mike Morris. And people forget, Mike Morris is coming over from Michigan. So he's already spent time being coached up by Mike McDonald. I think, and I know he's only going into his sophomore year, his second year in the National Football League. But, yo, Mike Morris, I think he's in store for the best year of his career yet. Pressures, too. Right, a bunch of pressures up the middle. Tacktown Boy 253 saying 350 holy cheeseburgers. Nah, for sure. Hey, he's a mammoth. He's a mammoth of a human being. That's for sure. Daddy Dennis, I don't want to be a Debbie Downer, but only the Williams signing got me excited. You know, hey, Dennis, maybe I hope you're cool with me not having to use the daddy part. But I'll say Dennis. I'll stick to Dennis. I can't blame you because, again, a lot of these signings are more so of the under the radar variety, and these aren't necessarily the signings that are considered the sexiest, right? But relative to how much they're getting paid, these signings are all home runs. And as I talked about last night with the Sam Howell, the Seattle Seahawks hit an absolute home run with the Sam Howell. And obviously, as the show progresses, as we get deeper into the show, I will touch on Sam Howell. And I absolutely love the Sam Howell trade. I know a lot of Seahawks fans have kind of expressed their displeasure, their dismay over the trade for Sam Howell. But if you guys didn't tune into my short that I dropped last night, allow me to clarify that for y'all, because that Sam Howell trade, there's a lot more than meets the eye. I'll just say that. Doom Moose. Schneider was getting flack from the 12s for the slow start, but now we're seeing things that show how fickle we can be. Go Hawks. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Seahawks. Eddie in the building, man. What's up, Steezy? What's up, Eddie? Hope you're having a great night, my brother. It's still sunny out here. I think I still see the sun, I believe. But Eddie, I know you're over here in the Seattle area. I hope you're getting some sunshine. Okay, Daddy Dennis is saying kids call me Daddy. Mom calls me Dennis. You can call me whatever. Hey, I'm going to call you Dennis. Daddy Dennis, but thank you for taking the time to hop on, man. I appreciate your presence, and I appreciate you for being here and for having shown support all these years. I mean, I remember I used to see you in the chat every time we were on a boat, and so, you know, it's always fun when we interact, and it's always fun having you in the chat. I think you're overall just a great personality and a great person to be around. So, yeah, man, thank you, Dennis. Seahawks Eddie saying I had the day off today. Okay, shoot. Well, it don't mean that you still can't enjoy no sunshine. I mean, shoot. But Eddie, nice to see you in the building, man. So we talked about Jonathan Hankins. We also talked about how the Seahawks reportedly outbid the Cowboys for Hankins, who reunites with Adam Dirty in Seattle. So on top of getting more money, he's also reuniting with a familiar face. And so I think at the end of it all, Hankins was just like, although he wanted to return to the Dallas Cowboys, to my knowledge, these two factors it was too much for him to overcome. And so Jonathan Hankins, whenever you see this, welcome to Seattle. Welcome to Seattle. Moving along now, and this was earlier today, so obviously this isn't breaking news, but again, in case you missed it, per NFL Network's Tom Pelissero, defensive back Kayvon Wallace is signing a one-year deal with the Seahawks. He was last with the Titans and spent the first half of last season with the Arizona Cardinals. While he was with the Arizona Cardinals, Kayvon Wallace also had his first INT. And for those of you guys who haven't already seen this, Wallace was a 4th-round pick out of Clemson by the Philadelphia Eagles back in 2020 and can be used at both safety spots. I saw an interesting stat that Corbin Smith, who covers the Seahawks for Sports Illustrated, he put this out on X. But Wallace finished 21st in coverage grade, and I'm assuming this is by way of Pro Football Focus. He finished 21st in coverage grade out of 61 qualified safeties, producing a pass breakup on nearly 15% of his 35 targets with both the Cardinals and the Titans. Shout out to Corbin. I'm still trying to get him on the show, and we'll definitely get that going definitely by this summer. If he's not on the show within the next couple of weeks, I'll definitely have him on the show by this summer. So for those of you guys that follow Corbin Smith and the Steezy A. Smith, another collab is on the way because we have worked a couple of times in the past. And for those of you guys that haven't seen that, give me a holla, give me a DM. I'd love to share those interviews and some of the stuff that we've worked on together. But Corbin Smith, obviously he does a lot of great work covering the Seahawks, one of the best Seahawks reporters out there. Shout out to Corbin Smith for this stat. But once again, Kayvon Wallace finished 21st in coverage grade out of 61 qualified safeties. Now, Pro Football Focus is nowhere near the end-all be-all, right? I'm not going to use that as the only measuring stick when it comes to evaluating players and performances and whatnot. But I think with the Kayvon Wallace, like Corbin Smith pointed out, he's versatile. He could play both safety spots. Coming out of college, he was primarily more of a box type of safety. I think his role has expanded as he spent time in the National Football League. But I think he was another sneaky good player for both the Titans and the Cardinals last year. Now, I still have to do a lot more digging into the film. I haven't had the opportunity to do that with a Wallace or a Hankins or some of these other guys like a Tyrel Dodson and a Jerome Baker. But what I do know, again, these guys are all flying under the radar. And the Seahawks have a penchant not only for bringing these guys on board, but for resurrecting careers. And so I'm not saying that his career was about to end by any means, but Kayvon Wallace, I mean, again, in Seattle, by bringing on another safety that's versatile, he could play. He can be your nickel. He can be your dime. He could be a strong safety. He could be a free safety. He's expanded his repertoire. He's not just a guy that you're going to keep in the box. Again, he had his first INT with the Cardinals last year, and he's still a young guy. He's still a young safety, but Kayvon Wallace, if you're watching, welcome to Seattle. Before I move on to the next pick, though, I do want to go back to the chat and get some of your guys' details. Great to sign in. Let me know your reactions. And if you have anything else you want to say about Kayvon Wallace, I mean, again, put it in the chat, y'all. All Around Sports is saying, or in the building. What's up, All Around Sports? The Seahawks are building something. I don't know if they were going to be competitive with the Niners because we don't know what to expect. What do you think we should expect? Well said, All Around Sports. I think with, again, and I've said this time and time again, but with the new regime in place, with Mike McDonald still getting acclimated to the NFL and how he wants to put together this team of his, because again, he's the youngest head coach in the National Football League. Let's not forget that, y'all. Not only is he the youngest in the NFL, this is his first time. And so let's give him some time to kind of map out his vision for how he wants to build and construct this football team. Year one, I do not expect the playoffs. To be quite frank with you guys, I do not expect the Seahawks to make the playoffs in year one, nor would I even necessarily want the Seahawks to make the playoffs in year one. And that's not to say that it's because I'm not rooting for this team. It's just because if the Seahawks are looking forward to 2025 and beyond, when they're getting a bunch of cap space, right? Because now you're not having so much dead money on the books. When you're getting all these comp picks, when you're accumulating even more draft picks, when you're under a new regime, this is going to be more of a retool / rebuild. And so year one, I think the Seattle Seahawks take that step back, because sometimes you need to take a step back to take a couple steps forward. But all around sports, great point and great question. Daddy Dennis, Noah became a TV star. Steezy next. Man, shout out to my brother Noah, man. It's been a while since we've done a show together, and I miss him. I miss him to death, man. That's my brother from another mother, as you guys know. But Dennis, to answer your question, whether that's TV, whether that's social media, whether that's whatever's in God's plan, that's what's next. I'll say that. But I've worked with a lot of companies out here. I've had interviews from a lot of companies out here, and so who knows what's next. But what I can't tell you guys is right now, I like this whole being independent and being able to kind of control, my own schedule, and in a way being able to do what I want. I know that, by working for a company and that network and that media outlet, there's restrictions and, things that come with that. But I kind of like the way that things are now. And so who knows? But man, Dennis, thank you, man. That definitely touches me a little bit. So I appreciate that. We got Sports PSP in the building, man. What's up, my brother? He's saying like and subscribe to the pod. I appreciate the shout out. For those of you guys that are big sports fans, at Sports PSP on Instagram, on YouTube. He doesn't just dabble into the NFL. He dabbles into literally all sports. NBA. I've seen wrestling. I've seen hip hop. I've seen culture. And so just for all things, man, I got mixed up there. For all things sports, for all things pop culture, be sure to give my man a subscribe and a follow, man, at Sports PSP. I appreciate the shout out, for real. Thank you. Thank you, brother. Sajin is saying, up next, Calvin Domingo reporting from ESPN. That's the goal. That's the dream. I appreciate it, Sajin. That's love, man. That's love. Daddy Dennis is saying, looks like Schneider really values those PFF grades. Right, and if you guys remember from a couple of years ago, Akella Witherspoon. I hope that name rings a bell, but I remember at one point he was highly graded on PFF scale, and the Seahawks pounced in free agency. He's performed well outside of Seattle, but not necessarily while he was in Seattle. So I don't know, what's going on there, but I think John Schneider and the Seahawks front office, they really do value PFF grades. And I don't know if they're being serious. I don't know if they're trolling to an extent, but when Seattle posted about Tyrel Dodson, they captioned it by saying Pro Football Focus's number one linebacker, or Pro Football Focus's number one rated linebacker from last season, and then they tagged at Tyrel Dodson. And so I think for the last 3, 4, 5 years now, we've seen the Seattle Seahawks sign a bunch of guys that were highly graded by Pro Football Focus. And so I don't know, maybe somebody, or maybe John Schneider is close or has people in that Pro Football Focus building that he trusts. So I'm not exactly sure, but again, Pro Football Focus isn't the end all be all, but I think it definitely is a solid measuring stick, and it can be useful in certain situations. Not Chief is asking, y'all ever doing a roundtable with Norb again? Ooh, I can't give a definitive answer right now, but I will just say, Not Chief, stay tuned. Daddy Dennis is saying, I prefer Madden ratings over PFF. Interesting. Honestly, I like to think that a lot of the times there's a lot of correlation between. Actually, no, I take that back, because never mind. I've seen some highly graded players on PFF, but then they're poorly rated on Madden. So scratch that. Never mind. Seahawks Eddie saying, what's up, Sajin? That's what scares me so much, the learning on the job aspect. Dennis, you bring up a great point. But at the same time, I think Mike McDonald's in a position to succeed. I mean, Leslie Frazier, as we all know by now, is the new Seahawks assistant head coach. And he spent time as a head coach. He spent time as a defensive coordinator. He's an NFL veteran. He spent so much time coaching the defense, coaching football teams, and he's had a lot of success in doing so. And while, yes, it's not enough to just have a guy like that and say like, okay, now that we have a first-time head coach, we have a guy that can mentor him. We're all good. We're set. It's not necessarily like that, but I think it's definitely going to help. And obviously, as we know, that Seahawks culture is well known, has a great reputation. He has a great support system. There's a bunch of talented players like Hamza mentioned. And so he's set up to succeed. I will say that. I will say that. Rockman Drums is saying, just beat the 49ers twice and I'm happy, and the Rams. I know a lot of Seahawks fans will be. Even if Seattle were to beat them just once each, or if they were to beat one of those teams just once out of 4 times, I wouldn't be mad at that. I really wouldn't. Dennis is saying, went from top 20 wins in NFL history to a newbie who learned under Harbaugh. I'm scared. Both Harbaughs. Both Harbaughs. People forget how talented our roster is. I think we will be able to compete right away. I see what you're saying, Hamza, and with the Seahawks restructuring Tyler Lockett, with DK Metcalf still there, with JSN still there, I think the Seahawks will definitely give a lot of teams a run for their money. But when I'm looking at the landscape of the NFC, only 7 teams are going to make it. And so, real quick, right now, just off the top of my head, the San Francisco 49ers, the Detroit Lions, the Philadelphia Eagles, the Atlanta Falcons. I'm going to go the LA Rams, the Dallas Cowboys. Who knows? The Green Bay Packers. Maybe the Chicago Bears with Caleb Williams and that revamped offense. I don't know. I mean, there could be 3 teams out of the NFC North. The NFC South is much improved. The Saints are still there. Buccaneers are keeping a lot of their core pieces intact. The Panthers should be a lot better. The Cardinals are going to be better. I know the Rams lost Aaron Donald, but they've been adding a lot of pieces to that offense. And so I think the Seahawks are definitely going to be a team that contends for a wild card spot. I think the Seahawks are definitely going to be a team that overachieves as far as what their projected win, or as what their projected over under as far as the win total is. But as far as making the playoffs, I don't see it. But being able to compete and being able to play teams that are a lot better than you, but being able to play them well, I think, look, again, the Seahawks are definitely going to give people a run for their money. That's for sure. Rockman Drums is saying, I think we will surprise a lot of teams. We are definitely going to be nasty to play, and I'm excited to see it. Right, and this is a little off topic, but we talked about Pharoah Brown on last week's show, and with him coming on board, he's one of the best run blocking tight ends in all the National Football League. And so to sign him at 1 year and for a contract up to $3.2 million, that's a fraction. That's a third of what Will Dissly was owed. And he might even be an upgrade over a Will Dissly. And so, see, it's signings like that where I say, yeah, it's under the radar, but man, it's going to surprise some people for sure. I think Hamza agrees with Rockman Drums. Dennis is saying, don't sleep on the Bucs. Best running game in the South, and Baker's on the rise. See, my only concern with the Bucs is that they did lose Dave Canales, and he's definitely played a huge role in the success of Baker Mayfield, in the success of Russell Wilson, in the success that Geno Smith has had, among other quarterbacks, among other players. We'll see what happens there. I'm glad that they were able to retain a lot of their pieces, but Dave Canales was a big loss for the Buccaneers. Let's not forget that. Not Chief is saying, bro, that Atlanta finna go crazy with Kirk. Atlanta finna be celebrating with their lemon pepper wings. For sure. Hey, Not Chief, you trying to make me hungry over here? Lemon pepper wings sound busting right now. I'm not gonna lie. Hamza is saying competitive to say it better. I agree. I 1000%. And if that's the word that we want to use, I'm with you there, Hamza. I'm with you there. Quick question though, Hamza. Do you watch? And forgive me if you're actually the real Hamza, but do you watch the YouTuber/influencer Hamza? And there's only one of them around, so there can only be one person that we're talking about here. But yeah, Hamza, let me know if you actually watch him, the self-improvement YouTuber, because I'm a big fan of his. I definitely have been a fan for the last couple of years. I tune in and I love his content. So just seeing your name in the chat, I think that's real cool. But Hamza, as always, though, thank you for tuning in, and thank you for all the chats, and thank you for the support. All around sports is going to be tricky, especially with the schedule we have. It's going to be difficult. Exactly. Dennis, Bobby, and Dan Quinn will immediately turn around the Commanders. They've signed so many veterans: Austin Eckler, Zach Ertz. They're obviously going to draft a quarterback at number 2 overall, and that's probably either going to be Jaden Daniels or Drake May. And so with an offensive line, it's also revamped with some pieces that they've been bringing on defensively. I wouldn't be surprised if they also end up competing for a wild card berth. I don't see them competing for a division title anytime soon, but as far as being a team that's pesky, a team that's going to give other teams a run for their money, a team that's going to play above their talent level, I can see it. There's a lot of leadership there. A lot. All Around Sports is asking, who do you think the Seahawks should go after in the free agency section? So I was actually saving this for a little later, but right now I only have one free agent remaining on my wish list. And obviously this list is fluid. I know it only has one name right now, but it's bound to change. Don't be surprised if it does change in the coming days. Right now I have one free agent on my wish list, All Around Sports. And he's a guy that's 6'4", 20 plus pounds. Spent some time with the Giants last year, was traded from the Arizona Cardinals. I think the Giants used him well. They put him in positions to succeed. But Isaiah Simmons, I want Isaiah Simmons in Seattle. I was banging the table for him on last week's show. And I just think that with an Isaiah Simmons, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say that he'll be the next Kyle Hamilton, but they have similar size / builds, right? They're both 6'4". Simmons is obviously not as heavy as a Kyle Hamilton. He's more athletic than a Kyle Hamilton. But man, I think if Isaiah Simmons were to land in Seattle, I think position doesn't matter necessarily as much, just because Mike McDonald, he does so much as far as disguising. You don't know which guys are going to be going after the quarterback. You don't know which guys are dropping back. And that's why Mike McDonald, one of the things that he values with his defenders is versatility. And so if the Seattle Seahawks were to bring on an Isaiah Simmons, he could definitely do wonders with Isaiah Simmons. But All Around Sports, to answer your question, I have one free agent on my wish list, and it's to sign Isaiah Simmons. Let me know what you guys think of Isaiah Simmons in the chat. I know he's been kind of a tweener in the National Football League, but like I said, the New York Giants, they showed the rest of the league how to properly utilize an Isaiah Simmons, and I'm actually kind of surprised that he's yet to be re-signed by the team. I'm not as surprised by the lack of interest by outside teams, but the fact that the New York Giants have yet to re-sign him, that's a little concerning, but again, I think he would thrive under Mike McDonald, and I would love for the Seahawks to go out and get him. Now I'm going to go back to some of you guys here in the chat. Should Jadeveon Clowney come back to the Seahawks? I've also been banging the table for that. I wouldn't be disappointed if the Seahawks didn't get a Jadeveon Clowney, but if the money is right, it's just because right now the Seahawks cap space is slowly dwindling. You still need to save some cap space for the draft. But if Jadeveon Clowney and the Seahawks can agree on a contract that benefits both sides, I wouldn't be opposed to it. I really wouldn't. Okay, there you go. Rockman Drums is echoing my very sentiment. Unless we restructure a contract or cut some, we don't have much cap left to sign any more players. There you go. Thank you for the information there, Rockman Drums. I know of him. He's doing good things. Yep, I love Clowney back, Eddie. He was the first player in any sport to force a trade to Seattle. Well, at the time, Dwayne Brown was a left tackle for the Seattle Seahawks, and Dwayne Brown and Jadeveon Clowney had obviously spent time previously with the Houston Texans, and so Dwayne Brown was over there recruiting Jadeveon Clowney. But Dennis, I mean, to your point, it still holds true, but that's he was the first player in any sport to force a trade to Seattle. No doubt about that, though. Isaiah Simmons is a great player. He's hard to play against. I've watched NFL since 2019. He's a beast. I like the idea. And especially if utilized and in the right scheme. Oh, yeah. Space, so we did address this at the top of the show. But, Jonathan Hankins signs with the Seattle Seahawks. I think it's important to mention the Seahawks did outbid the Dallas Cowboys for Jonathan Hankins. All Around Sports is asking, who do you think the Seahawks are going to draft this year? I'm going to just stick to the first round because I will have a draft show. But I do want the Seahawks to draft an interior lineman or just an offensive lineman period. Just because a lot of these guys are versatile, you can't move them all over the line. I don't want to just drop the player because, again, I will have a draft show. But all around sports, to answer your question, in round one, I'm all in favor of the Seattle Seahawks going offensive line. Not Chief is saying, I always thought Simmons was underrated when he was with the Cardinals. He was also underutilized when he was with the Cardinals, and he just never really fit. Now, like I just brought up with the New York Giants, he showed plenty of flashes. He was starting to be utilized correctly. And again, what better coach than Mike McDonald to properly utilize a defensive guy, a defensive weapon like an Isaiah Simmons? Appreciate the comment, Not Chief. I wanted to start off the show by saying this, though, y'all. The vision or process, however you guys want to look at it, in Seattle now is all about retooling for 2025. Sign a bunch of value contracts in free agency now, see which players are fit for the roster moving forward, and hoard 2025 comp picks. Now, because Seattle has made a plethora of signings now in free agency as we continue to get deeper into the second wave of free agency, I'm not exactly sure, but if anyone out there can confirm or clarify, I'm not sure if the Seahawks now have the maximum of 4 compensatory picks in next year's draft because, again, the Seahawks have been signing free agents. I know the signing of Rayshawn Jenkins doesn't affect Seattle's compensatory picks in 2024 or 2025, excuse me. But again, because I asked that question and it's on the thumbnail, do we see the vision now? Do you see the vision now? The way that I see it, the vision or process in Seattle now, again, is all about retooling for 2025. All these value contracts that are being signed are all 1 and 2 year deals. That 2-year deal for Rayshawn Jenkins is very reminiscent of that 2-year contract that Julian Love signed last year. And guess what? While he struggled in the first half of the season, he was able to turn it around, turn up, and become a Pro Bowler for the Seattle Seahawks. And so now the Seahawks went from having one of the more expensive safety rooms in all the National Football League to now having one of the more underrated and inexpensive safety rooms in the National Football League with Rayshawn Jenkins, Julian Love, and Kayvon Wallace. I don't think that the Seahawks are done at safety just yet. But why splurge? And I think I talked about this briefly earlier because, again, on last week's show, I wanted to address all the fans, all the people out there that were calling for John Schneider's job. A lot of people were calling out John Schneider for the lack of activity, but it's like, why splurge on outside free agents again in year one under a new regime? As I preached last week, we have to trust the process. It's still going to take time for Mike McDonald to get acclimated. He still doesn't know exactly how he wants to construct this roster moving forward. Now, I'm sure he has a long leash, and so I don't think that making the playoffs is an absolute expectation in year one, although there is still talent. This team will be competitive, but as far as competing, not just yet. This team is still retooling, but it is retooling on the fly. So we'll see what happens come 2025. But I think 2025 and moving forward, those years are definitely years in which I'll expect the Seahawks to make the playoffs. But this first year under Mike McDonald, I wouldn't be mad if they don't make it. So again, I really hope this hits home, y'all. But there's just no reason for the Seahawks to splurge on outside free agents in year one under a new regime. Leonard Williams is a little different. He dominated for the Seahawks down the stretch. And it's not just because, Seattle gave up a second-round pick. You got to bring him back. He dominated for the Seahawks in the second half of last year. He's 30 years old, yes, but 30 is the new 25. And so I think he still has another 3 to 4 years of excellence in him, especially if he remains in Seattle. Again, Uchenna Nwosu missed the second half of last year when he got injured and was lost for the year. That Seahawks defense completely fell apart. And so wait for him to come back. Boye Mafe is going to take that next step forward. Obviously, Seattle's going to add reinforcements in the draft, but aside from the Leonard Williams re-signing, it just does not make sense. It never really made any sense to splurge on outside free agents, though I will say this. Bryce Huff, the pass rusher, the edge defender who ultimately signed with the Philadelphia Eagles for, I think it was a 3-year, $51 million contract. He did mention in his press conference that the Seahawks had interest in pursuing him. And so it would have been real interesting to see Seattle make a splash if he ended up signing with the Seattle Seahawks. But I definitely think that was definitely, I keep saying definitely. I definitely think that was important to highlight, just because if he didn't end up signing with the Eagles, if he didn't re-sign with the Jets, then who knows how much money the Seahawks would have gave him. But again, I thought that was interesting. I just wanted to point it out. So we've talked about Jonathan Hankins. We talked about Kayvon Wallace. We don't need to spend too much time on this, just because I still need to do a whole bunch of diving into the film here. But offensive guard Tremaine Ancrum Jr., a former LA Rams backup. He was a 7th-round pick of the Rams back in 2020, and he has appeared in 31 games with 1 start. I'll definitely talk to a few Rams content creators. I know a few. I'm good friends with a few. I wanted to get some of their insights on a Tremaine Ancrum Jr., just because obviously I don't know all that much. If there are any Rams fans, for whatever reason, in the chat, if you guys could provide some insight, I think that'd be useful, right? Not just for me, but for the chat as a whole. I'm excited for this signing. I think he has potential. He's still young. One of the things that he thought was appealing about the Seattle Seahawks was an opportunity to compete, an opportunity to start, for this football team. I don't think that while he showed promise last year, I don't think that Anthony Bradford just has a spot locked in. He's definitely going to have to compete, but a Tremaine Ancrum coming over from the Rams, coming over from the enemy, he's young. He's not fully developed, and so we'll see what happens there. But this is definitely another under-the-radar signing that could pay off in huge dividends if developed and if coached up properly. Before we move on to the next player, though, I do want to get back to some of you guys here in the chat. Rockman Drums is saying, would you guys freak out if they picked a receiver at 16? Oh, yeah. If the Seahawks picked a receiver at 16, I think, to me, that might indicate a potential trade. That might mean that one of the receivers is on the move, and that could be a DK Metcalf, that could be a Jackson Smith-Njigba, but I think that's highly, highly unlikely. The Seahawks just restructured Tyler Lockett, and so it just would not make any sense whatsoever to take a receiver at 16 unless they had the intent of trading that receiver for a great return package. But that's not the move. That is not the move. We got Rhea in the building saying, hey, Calvin. Hey, Rhea, I hope you're having a lovely evening. I hope you're having a blessed night. And as always, thanks for hopping on the chat. Thanks for hopping on the show. Really, it means more than you know. All around sports, Steezy A. I've been a Seahawks fan since I was born in 2004. I've had a passion for sports for years. I love talking Seahawks and other sports. What name would you give this new defense other than LOB? Honestly, it's hard to just give this team or this defense a name now, just because we've yet to see this team perform on the field. So to give you a lazy answer, and just because he's one of my favorite players right now, I'm going to say the Legion of Spoon. I just think with Mike McDonald being there, he's going to turn this guy. Well, he already had all-pro potential, right? But he's going to help Devin Witherspoon continue to evolve and eventually become the best corner in all of football. And so, yeah, it's a little biased. It's a lazy answer. It's a cop-out. But to answer your question all around sports, the Legion of Spoon. That's what I'll call it. Damn, but I can never stay till the end of the show. I gotta sleep, bro. Peace out, Steezy. Hey, you all good now, Chief. I mean, just the fact that you're tuning in all the way over the ATL, that means enough already. So, Chief. Hey, have a blessed night, my little brother. And until the next stream. If Simmons were to stay healthy and be on a good team, he'd be a household name. He needs a winning culture badly. Right. I mean, he spent time with the Cardinals and the Giants, for crying out loud. I don't even need to touch on those two franchises. But under the Seahawks, he would thrive. If let's say, hypothetically speaking, he were to sign with the Seahawks and that ended up fizzling out, then I don't know what that means for the rest of his career, but I think he would thrive. He would excel in Seattle. So great point there, Dennis. Simmons would have got me excited, but the injuries are scary. That's always something to think about, right? That's always something that you kind of have to factor in when you sign guys in free agency. But again, there's a bunch of DBs, there's a bunch of safeties, there's a bunch of defensive players that this team has gone out and signed in free agency. And so, in a way, you've already kind of hedged against that, right? By bringing on all these guys. Kayvon Wallace, like we just talked about, is versatile and can play at both safety spots. And so, yes, that's definitely something to worry or to think about. But at the same time, there's other guys on the roster that's capable of filling in. We haven't even talked about Kobe Bryant or Jarek Reed. Those guys could also play safety if needed. I wanted Wagner, Queen, Stone in that order. I know, look, I was an advocate for a Bobby Wagner to stay in Seattle just for the sake of the on the field leadership, right? And being able to be an example, that embodiment of Seahawks culture. But the more that I think about it, Bobby Wagner is more of a one-trick pony at this stage of his career. That's not to say that he can't be put in positions to succeed, but just him in pass coverage, it just hasn't been all smooth sailing these last couple of years. Even when he was with the Rams, they purposely avoided putting him in those positions in which he would get exposed. And so I'm not completely opposed to Seattle letting go of him. Now, and again, I did talk about it on this channel. I wanted him to stay, but primarily because of the leadership qualities and the fact that he embodies Seahawks culture. Now that he's gone, as far as on the field performance, yes, Seattle's going to miss him and what he does in the run game, how he is able to, be a leader of men and get these other guys going. But Dennis, as far as coverage, I mean, it's just hard for Mike Macdonald. It's going to be hard for him to do what he wants to do on defense if there's going to be a guy that's going to be a liability in this aspect of the game. That's just what it is, plain and simple. And it's not completely on Bobby Wagner. I mean, he is getting older, but the fact that he's still such an elite tackler, such an elite run defender at this age, that's still very, very telling and more just of a testament to his greatness. But as far as what he can and can't do in pass coverage, I think ultimately that's what got him in DC. So a very rough free agency for me. And with the Patrick Queen, we've talked about this before, but if Mike Macdonald wasn't going to pound the table for his former all-pro linebacker in Baltimore, even at a relative bargain, then watch the Seattle fans be tripping. Rockman Jones, we're going to be a hard-hitting defense, McDonald, Coach McCrunch. I like that. Hamza is saying most fans view spending big money in free agency as a way to build the roster, and that's where all the fire John talk came from. Right. And I talked about this on last week's show, but a lot of fans have become short-sighted. So I'm just glad that the team has been making moves because a lot of fans have kind of since then. And so I guess that's a good thing, right? Names come with winning. That's a great point. No wins, and you will probably not like your name. I agree, Dennis. And so maybe we don't have to give this defense a name yet because they got to earn one. Let's say that. Fans will have all kinds of colorful names for them if they lose. Another great point. All Around Sports is saying, I can't stand the Dallas Cowboys. I troll their fans every time they lose, especially in the playoffs. Do you not like the Cowboys? I think for me, it's not that I don't like the Cowboys. It's maybe more so it's the fan base. I mean, a lot of the fans are just obnoxious. And maybe by default, I kind of, in a way, look at the Cowboys differently. Like when I see them on TV, I definitely don't root for them. But I can't just sit here and definitively say I don't like the Cowboys. It's more so I don't like Cowboy fans. Dennis is saying Cowboys stole Tony Dorsett from the Seahawks. Boo Cowboys all the time. Oh, well, if that's the case, yeah, boo Cowboys. Tony Dorsett, a Hall of Fame running back. Okay, yeah. And if not top 5, he's a top 10 running back in NFL history. Tony Dorsett still holds the record for longest run in NFL history. Must have been before I was. Oh, yeah. Tony Dorsett played was it the 70s and the 80s? Because I don't think it was the 90s. Correct me if I'm wrong, though, Dennis. I think it was in the 70s or in the 80s that Tony Dorsett played, but definitely one of the greatest running backs of all time, hands down. Okay, it was in the 70s. Deshaun Baker in the building. Oh, wrong comment. Steezy A. Smith, my brother. Hey, Deshaun, I don't know if you saw that shorts clip that I dropped because remember last week on the show, You said Jerome Baker to Seattle, and that was before reports even came about of Jerome Baker visiting with the Seahawks. And so I know this might sound like a wild question, but Deshaun Baker, you're not at all related to Jerome Baker, are you? Just thought I'd ask. In the 70s, okay. Same, I can't stand their fans. A lot of people can't. And we're talking about Dallas Cowboy fans. Okay, so Tony Dorsett did play in the 70s and the 80s. Dorsett should have been a Seahawk. Cowboys and Dorsett colluded to force us not to pick him. Oh, wow. Wow, I didn't know that. I definitely got to do some more digging. We got Daquan Ingram in the building. The fan base is delusional. I don't want to say that the whole fan base is delusional, but I will say that there's some bad apples in the fan base. Let's just say that. Let's be nice about it. Deshaun Baker, I did, and then no, sir, LOL. Okay. I just thought I'd ask. I mean, I know it was a bit of a long shot, but just thought I'd ask. But Deshaun Baker, I appreciate you for taking the time to tune in, man. I really appreciate it, for real. Thank you. Now that I've gotten to some of you guys here in the chat, I will go back to some of these topics that I had outlined for us. I know this is a little late, but linebacker Jerome Baker, he ended up signing with the Seattle Seahawks for 1 year, $7 million. He was Pro Football Focus's 18th best linebacker in coverage. And in contrast, Bobby Wagner and Jordan Brooks were 49th and 50th, respectively. Again, Pro Football Focus isn't the end-all be-all when it comes to evaluating, grading, analyzing the performances and the players themselves. But I think it's definitely a good measuring stick, a good tool to use when convenient. Again, it's not the end-all be-all. But Jerome Baker, long been one of the more underrated linebackers in all the National Football League, has spent his entire career, as a matter of fact, with the Miami Dolphins. He's a little bit on the lighter side at 220-something pounds. But I think with his excellence in coverage, yeah, he could stand to gain some muscle, definitely bulk up a little bit. But I don't think the Seahawks are done at linebacker. And so I'm not going to look at the signing, or I'm not going to look at what he doesn't bring to the table and just say, yo, this is a bad signing. Because, look, it was a great signing. He's an all-around linebacker. He's great at getting after the quarterback. Again, he's excellent in coverage. He has 10, what is it? Is it 10 INTs or is it 10 breakups? But he has a combined 15 pass breakups / INTs in his career so far. And mind you, he's a linebacker, not a safety, not a corner, not a defensive back. But as a linebacker, he has those stats. And so, yes, it's not eye-popping, right? But Jerome Baker, man, and see, this is why I was trying to tell fans last week to calm down. And now I'm asking, do you see the vision? Because now that Seattle's finally signing guys, bringing guys on board, a lot of these players are under the radar, underrated. And now they could end up being underpaid, depending on how they perform next year. But let me know what you guys think of the Jerome Baker signing. Again, I got to do some more diving into the film and doing a lot more of my research. But Jerome Baker, he's always been a guy that's, anytime I watch the Miami Dolphins defense play, he's always been a guy that stood out to me. He's always been a guy that's popped out on the screen. He can literally do it all. Again, he's not the best tackler. He does have 3 100 tackle seasons on his resume, but as far as shedding and getting off blocks, because of his lighter frame, he's not the best at that, right? But again, I don't think Seattle is done at linebacker because he excels in coverage, because he excels as a blitzer, because he can't do everything else on the field. He is yet another chess piece for Mike McDonald and the rest of that defense to put to use, right? And so if I had to give the signing a grade right now, I'd give it a B+. I'd give it a B+. Let's move on to the next linebacker now, though, shall we? I'm not going to spend too much time on each of these guys just because we've probably seen countless bits and pieces all over social media. The linebacker Tyrel Dodson, who signed in a 1-year, $4.2 million deal with the Seattle Seahawks, was Pro Football Focus's 3rd best linebacker in coverage last year and Pro Football Focus's highest grade linebacker overall. And also, according to NFL's Next Gen Stats, Dodson was second in the NFL in fewest EPA per target allowed at negative 0.49. So he excelled in coverage. He was stopping the run. He was getting after and pressuring the quarterback. He's shown his versatility. He showcased his versatility. I'm not going to lie, y'all. When I saw Matt Milano go down with, I think it was a torn ACL for the Buffalo Bills last year, I was like, ooh-wee. This defense is going to take a step back. Matt Milano was having one of the better linebacker seasons out of all linebackers in the NFL last year. And so when he went down, that was a huge blow. But the presence of Dodson, what he was able to do in Buffalo, in limited action, right? I think it was 9 or 10 games, and hasn't ever really been a starter, throughout his career. But just the flashes that we saw last year, his excellence in coverage, his athleticism was on full display. He could do everything on the field. I'm very, very excited about this signing. And if I had to look at all the signings that the Seahawks have made in free agency, this one right here might be my most favorite. This one right here might also be the best bang for its buck that the Seahawks are going to get. I think Rayshawn Jenkins comes in at a close second, but Tyrel Dodson, if he's able to build on what we saw last year with the Buffalo Bills, and if he's going to be coached up by Mike Macdonald in this scheme, oh yeah, NFL better watch out. I could see Dodson being a major part of this team moving forward. Yes, it's only a one-year deal, but obviously if he's able to have a great season, he could parlay that into a long-term extension next offseason, or even as early as sometime next season if he's playing that well. And so let me know what you guys think. I have a feeling I know what you guys are going to say and your guys' thoughts on this signing, but I absolutely love it. I think, again, with what he brings to the table, there's still untapped potential there. I think he's going to explode in Seattle. And so I'm not even mad about Seattle not landing Devin White anymore, because Tyrel Dodson, shoot, he could be an upgrade. He really could be. I'm going to go back to some of you guys here in the chat. Sajin is saying, got it dip, brother, man. Watching my TBL versus VGS. Hey, you good, brother. As always, Sajin, God bless you and your family. Thanks for always taking the time to tune in, and I hope you have a blessed night, brother. Thank you. Dennis is saying they have lots of money and they have to put up with Philly and Jersey fans twice a year. All Around Sports is asking, who is the team you despise the most? Steezy A. Ooh. Right now, it got to be the San Francisco 49ers. It got to be the Niners. Dennis was saying the Celtics. I used to hate the Celtics growing up. But now I'm not really there. And Dennis, you probably know this, because of the Bowl. But you know that I'm a Miami Heat fan, and the Celtics have been a thorn on the side of the Miami Heat in recent years. But it's not the Celtics right now. Nah, it's the San Francisco 49ers. They definitely take the cake. Defense is going to be better this year, hands down. Kayvon Wallace is special. Oh, wow. I think Kayvon Wallace still has a bunch of untapped potential. I still think that he has a lot more to offer to the team than what we've seen throughout his career thus far. But I think he definitely landed in the perfect spot. I will say that. But I appreciate you for pointing that out, Deshaun. But in regards to the linebackers that we were talking about, and a Jerome Baker and a Tyrel Dodson, Hamza is saying, love Bobby and Jordan, but big upgrade at linebacker. 1,000%. 1,000%. We get one or two more in the draft, and we can be set there for years. Yes, I really hope that Junior Colson is a guy that Seattle loves just as much as I do, because as we know, not only did he excel at Michigan last year, but he has been coached up by Mike Macdonald. I think if Seattle were to draft him, oh yeah, this linebacking core, oh my gosh. Seattle should still have a basketball team. Now, this is a little off topic, but I agree 1,000%. Like Hamza just said, 2026, I'd expect an announcement to be made before the end of this year, or at least sometime next year. So within the next year or so, expect an announcement to be made about the return of the Seattle Seahawks. But first, the NBA has to expand, right? And so as soon as the NBA announces its plans to expand, just know that the Seahawks are on the way, y'all. The Supersonics. But I do have some people that have told me that. So you guys heard it here first. Daquan Ingram is saying it's an upgrade for a bottom of the barrel defense. Oh, shoot. Yeah, and the contracts are team friendly too. Excellent job so far. Just need the draft to solidify excellence of the front office. 1,000%. And I think with the Seahawks making all these signings on defense, I think it would serve them well to focus on offense, particularly the offensive line come the draft. But Daquan, look, great point. Seahawks defense has been awful, and objectively speaking, right, has been awful these last couple of years. And so when you're bringing on guys that are flying under the radar on the cheap, guys are definitely going to be playing with the chip on their shoulders. Prove it deals scare me. If you like a player and see long-term with them, you showed in the contract length. Yeah, but Dennis, then again, I mean, this is a new regime. Mike McDonald, like, he's still new to all this. And so you can't be crippling long-term flexibility and your finances in the long term when you're still trying to figure your ways, right? You're still trying to find yourself as a head coach in this league. And so I'm not mad and I'm not opposed to the strategy, but there is some credence to what you're saying. And so you're definitely still bringing up valid points. Seahawks committed to almost nobody, which is totally fine, because I think that if the vision is 2025 and forward, again, you don't want anybody crippling the finances long term. After 2025, Geno's contract's going to come off the books, unless he's, of course, extended. His contract's going to come off the books. The Seahawks have $36.1 million in dead money this year. That's gonna come off the books come next year. And so, again, I think there's definitely a plan in place for 2025. And so, Dennis, it might be a little frustrating, but I believe in the vision. That's when expansion should happen, right? Seattle and Vegas, right? Those are the top two cities, right? We got TZ So Crazy in the building. What's good, TZ? What's good, TZ? Hope you're having a great night, my brother. Thanks for tuning in, man. Great move. No need to lock money up when you don't know what you have yet. Exactly. And thank you for echoing those same sentiments, Hamza. I appreciate that. Okay, Daquan, you're a Miami Heat fan as well. Man, that's what's up, man. I don't know too many over here in the Seattle area. And so definitely when I come across one, you know, I definitely like to chop it up. But I think that's real cool, Daquan. Man, Heat Nation, baby. Come on. Kayvon Wallace and Jerome Baker. I have our Hawks as a sleeper team along with the Bears. I'm with you there, all around sports. It comes off as a team afraid to commit because they got bit by it. Wait, but then again, you can't blame them just because there's a new regime in place. When you bring guys in on one-year contracts, you're bringing in a mercenary. Not always bad. Interesting. My grandma's a 49ers fan and my dad is a Seahawks fan, so I got my passion for the Seahawks from my dad. Talk about a fun fact. My gosh. Niners and Seahawks in the family? Ooh, wee. Sam Howell going to be great. We have better targets than Commanders, and he got a big arm. Right, and he's a leader of men. All around sports is saying I'm a Warriors fan for now. Hey, I'm a big Steph Curry fan, so I'm not mad at you there. But TZ, that actually, you know what? I think that's a perfect segue into what I wanted to talk about next. And if you guys watched, I did drop a short last night, and I explained in detail why I believe that Sam Howell is an absolute home run for the Seattle Seahawks. And I'm going to dive into that a little bit more now, but TZ, great segue. Great segue. And I know that I do see you in the chat. I will get to you in just a second. I just want to, while we're here, bring it up. So we've talked about the linebackers. We've talked about the signings from today, Kayvon Wallace and Jonathan Hankins. We talked about Tremaine Ankrum, the former LA Rams guard that the Seahawks signed yesterday. We've talked about the vision and the process in Seattle. Now I want to talk about Sam Howell. And before we get into the thick of things about Sam Howell, let's revisit the trade. Because a lot of people, and a lot of Seahawks fans in particular, I feel like are really getting it mixed up A lot of Seahawks fans are saying that, oh, the Seahawks gave up a 3rd-round pick for Sam Howell. That's not necessarily true. Prior to the Sam Howell trade, the Seahawks had 2 3rd-round picks. Now, the Seahawks have 2 4ths and 2 6ths and are just without a 5th. Still has a 3rd to work with and is only really truly missing a 2nd-round pick. But in going back and revisiting the trade, the Seahawks traded pick number 78 for pick number 102. So Seattle is moving down 24 spots from the 3rd round to the 4th round to get Sam Howell. And they're trading back from number 152 in the 5th round to 179 in the 6th round, moving back 27 spots. I'm not going to sit here and say that moving back 24 spots and moving 27 spots isn't somewhat detrimental. It still kind of is. But when you get a 23-year-old quarterback, and just in case you guys didn't know this, Sam Howell is younger than me. He's 23. And he's owed just a total of just over $2 million in the next 2 years, as a matter of fact. So talk about a bargain. As some of you guys have pointed out in the chat, Sam Howell has one of the best arms in the National Football League. He's shown flashes of Josh Allen. He's shown flashes of Baker Mayfield. He's shown flashes of Drew Lock. But what I really like the most about a Sam Howell is that he is a leader, he's a leader of men. I was going to say man amongst boys, but not necessarily. He has a compact frame, right? He's not as big as a Josh Allen, but when it comes to everything off script and off schedule and creating with his legs, his last year at UNC, and maybe this was more by necessity, but Sam Howell had over 800 rushing yards and 11 rushing touchdowns his last year at the University of North Carolina. If you watched my short episode from last night, I also talked about how Sam Howell, when he was a true freshman at the University of North Carolina, he had 40 touchdowns. 40. 38 passing touchdowns and 2 rushing touchdowns as a true freshman at the University of North Carolina. At one point, he was a Heisman candidate. At one point, he was a bona fide top 10, top 15 pick in the draft. But he dealt with a plethora of guys leaving for the draft. He dealt with a poor offensive line. He dealt with injuries. I'm not trying to put up excuses, right? But I'm just detailing, some of the circumstances that he dealt with in college. He dealt with a lot. But the talent is there. He's young. He has starts under his belt. He has 18 starts under his belt. And he's younger than me. He's younger than some of these quarterbacks that are coming out in the draft. And so if all it took for the Seattle Seahawks to acquire a potential future at quarterback, if all it took was moving back 24 spots in the 3rd round and then moving back 27 spots from the 5th to the 6th round, and you get a potential quarterback of the future in exchange for what's really the equivalent of a day 3 pick, that's a home run. That's a home run in my eyes. I'm not going to sit here and say that he's going to take over Geno Smith's starting job, but what I will say that is the Seahawks finally have somewhat of a future at quarterback, and the cupboard isn't completely bare. Now, I hope that excuse me, I can't talk right now. Now, I hope that this trade doesn't preclude the Seattle Seahawks from drafting a quarterback. I still think that the Seattle Seahawks should still draft a quarterback on day 3. Whether that's in the 5th, 6th, or 7th round, the Seahawks still definitely need to draft a quarterback. And if this trade somehow does preclude the Seahawks from drafting a quarterback, then maybe I'll knock my grade down slightly. But look, this Sam Howell trade, and for those of you guys that are thinking that I'm just over here hopping on the hype train, I've been high on Sam Howell since before he became a Commander, since before he was drafted. I thought that he was going to be drafted on day 2. I thought he was even with the concerns heading into the draft, and I could see why he fell out of the 1st round altogether. But even then, I expected him to be drafted in the 2nd or the 3rd round. Yes, he fell to the 5th, But last year he showed a lot of promise, a lot of flashes. Yes, leading the league in interceptions is never a good thing, but when you lead the league in pass attempts with over 600, I mean, you're gonna throw some interceptions, especially when you're one of the youngest quarterbacks in the league. Yes, Howell threw 21 INTs last year, but in 3 years in college, Sam Howell threw 23. And so I think with the proper and with the right coaching staff, with the right weapons, with the better offensive line, I think that you can kind of rein that in a little bit. It's not like all throughout college he was just a pick machine. Yeah, some of those interceptions might have been frustrating, but it's not like he was just a turnover machine all of college. He wasn't. Again, as a true freshman, dude had 40 touchdowns. Like, that's insane as a true freshman in the ACC. I've been high, as you guys could clearly tell. I've been high on Sam Howell, and I'm still high on him. And so you're probably not going to come across a bunch of people that are enamored with that trade, especially not as passionate as I am, right? But I think it's an absolute home run. You trade back again, 20-something spots and in 2 different rounds. You still have the same number of picks. You're still building for 2025 and beyond. So Sam Howell, talk to me in the comments, y'all. I know I see a lot of comments here in the chat, so I definitely have a lot of comments I got to get to. But again, the Seahawks now have 2 4ths and 2 6ths and are without a 5th and a 2nd, but still have a 3rd to work with. And so this misconception, or it's a misconception that the Seahawks gave up a 3rd-round pick to get a Sam Howell. No, they traded down from one of the 3rds into the 4th to acquire a Sam Howell. It's not that they traded a 3rd to get Sam Howell, but they traded down and also acquired Sam Howell. I think that's the proper way to kind of phrase it. Before we move on, though, as you guys know, I do like to get to each and every single comment, at least the ones that I can get to. I try to get to all of y'all. But we have our first super chat in the building by way of Nolan. Nolan's always in the building, man. Nolan's always tuning in. And as per usual, Nolan is always supporting and donating the channel. So, Nolan, first off, hope you're having a great evening. But it looks like, hold on, sorry for being late. My neighbor's house had a kitchen fire. What did I miss? I've just been breaking down some of the signings. We've talked about Jonathan Hankins. We've talked about Kayvon Wallace. We've talked about Tremaine Ancrum Jr. We've talked about the vision for the Seahawks moving forward. We've talked about Sam Howell, but it's still a lot to talk about. And we talked about the linebackers. But Nolan, thank you for tuning in. I hope your neighbor's all right now. I mean, shoot, a kitchen fire is never a good thing. But Nolan, I hope you're having a blessed night, brother. Thank you for tuning in. And thank you for the super chat, as per usual. It means more than you know. Truly. Truly. Before I get to this next comment, though, I just want to use this time to just take a quick break from the show. And I just want to shout out the Instagram. Yeah, I want to shout out my Twitter, or X, I should say. If you guys aren't already following me on Instagram or on X, I post on there daily. And so for daily coverage, for daily content surrounding the Seahawks and the NFL, because I'm not on YouTube every single day, but I am on Instagram. I am on X every single day. And so if you guys aren't already following me on there, just look up at Steezy A Smith on Twitter and on Instagram. Again, I post on there daily. So if you're looking for your daily fix of Seahawks content and coverage, on Instagram and on X at Steezy A Smith. Going back to some of y'all here in the chat, Deshaun is saying Wallace played relatively well for both teams. Per PFF charting, he ranked 21st out of 61st qualified safeties with a 70.7 coverage grade, producing a pass breakup on nearly 15% of his 35 targets. Right, and Deshaun, you weren't here for the top of the show, and so I'm not going to sit here and blame you. I did bring that up at the top of the show, though, and shout out to Corbin Smith. He was the first person that I kind of saw post that stat. I know it is courtesy of Pro Football Focus, but again, let me pull it up here. Kayvon Wallace played well for both the Titans and the Cardinals last year. Definitely another guy that's flying under the radar. I would not be surprised if he had a career year with the Seahawks next season. All Around Sports is saying, my papa was a Rams fan. My aunt is a Raiders fan. Very divided house growing up. Wow. Yeah, I've seen Niners. I've seen Seahawks. I've seen Rams. I've seen Raiders. Sheesh. Dennis is saying I was kind of a Mavericks fan because Mark Cuban voted not. Okay, I didn't know that. Mark Cuban a real one for that, though, for real. Hoop Craze in the building. What's up, Hoop Craze? I see the Seahawks having 9 wins. I want to beat the Niners once, though, mostly. Yeah, I'm with you there. I think that the Seahawks would eke out a victory, whether that's against the Rams or the Niners, preferably both. Even if Seattle didn't make the playoffs next year, I think that'd be a cool thing. Been 2 years, and that's too long. Way too long. Seattle used to have their number. Obviously, a lot of that had to do with Russell Wilson, right? But yeah, it's time to start catching dubs against the Whiners again. It's been too long. Sam Howell has an edge. He's got a really big fan base. I agree. First thing Howell said is he wanted to play for the 12s. Love the atmosphere. If you guys recall, Sam Howell played phenomenal against the Seattle Seahawks in Lumen Field back in November. He had a great game, and he almost led the Commanders to a comeback victory over the Seahawks. He talked about how the Lumen Field is just the loudest stadium in all the National Football League. He talked very positively about the 12th man and just about the fan base here in Seattle. And so he's already spoken glowingly of everything here in Seattle, the fan base, the team, the front office. He talked about how this was one of the teams he had circled. When he knew that a trade was going to happen or was imminent, the Seahawks were one of the first teams he had circled. And so Seattle had an interest in him prior to him being drafted. He had an interest in playing for Seattle. He thought he was going to land in Seattle. And so, hey, man, this is everything coming full circle. So, Sam Howell, I'm glad that you're a Seahawk. Truly. We got Lyro back in the building, man. What's good, brother? I remember seeing you here last week. I appreciate you for taking the time to tune back in. Lyro is saying, Howell is younger than half the quarterbacks in the draft. I love the trade. Plus, now we have more flexibility in the draft, not having to worry about a backup quarterback. Exactly. Because before the Sam Howell trade took place, it was like, oh, Seattle has to leave the draft with a quarterback. But what if value-wise, it didn't make sense for Seattle to take a quarterback with whatever pick it was, whether that's on day 1, 2, or 3. Because as we know, Seattle is wanting to draft more based on BPA, right? Best player available. Seattle wants to maximize value, and so Seattle doesn't want to draft for need anymore. At least that's what John Schneider's talked about, right? And so Lyra, I think you bring up a great point. Now, if Seattle leaves this draft without a quarterback, it's not the end of the world. It's still like, yo, what are we doing? What's the future at quarterback, right? You still kind of have questions like that. But if Seattle were to leave this upcoming draft without a quarterback, again, it's not necessarily the end of the world just because you did bring in a 23-year-old that's younger than some of these prospects already. All Around Sports is saying, I see potential in Howell. He's had great comparisons with Josh Allen in his first 18 starts. Howell, I believe, is going to learn behind Geno for a year, then take over the next. Right. If Geno balls out, then perhaps he's earned his way to an extension with the Seattle Seahawks. But I think more likely than not, right, I think Sam Howell does sit a year behind Geno. I think he's going to learn a whole lot from Geno. He should be a sponge, right? He should absorb it and soak up a whole lot. And then entering the final year of his contract come 2025, if Geno Smith is no longer the guy, I think he'll be ready. Okay, Daquan, he has a PSA. Have we not learned from doling out long-term contracts to players that underperform when you have to eat that and keep them on the rosters because they have no trade value? It's crippling, family. Well said. Well said. I really couldn't have said it better myself. Russell was about the same age as Sam when he came to camp and took the job from the higher-priced vet. I would have put it past Sam. Matt Flynn face. Geno 66 career starts and 1 playoff loss to show for it. I'm ready for what's next. Well, I still want to give him an opportunity under a Ryan Grubb, under a new regime. He still has a whole bunch of weapons. The weaponry is still elite. The supporting cast with the new regime in place is still, I think, optimal and ideal. So we'll see what happens there. But Dennis, I don't blame you for feeling that way. I think if the Seahawks draft a quarterback, I think Rattler's a good option. What about you, Steezy? I know he's raw, but if Rattler's not the guy, and if none of the top 6 quarterbacks are on the radar of the Seahawks, I think Joe Milton. He's a combination of Cam Newton. I'm trying to think of other quarterbacks here. Let's just stick with the Cam Newton for now. But he's a huge dude. 6'5", has a cannon of an arm. Now, when it comes to everything else about being a quarterback or everything else that plays into being a quarterback, yeah, he lacks, right? He's ultra raw, but as far as physical tools, athleticism, having a live arm, I think Joe Milton would be a great developmental prospect for the Seahawks if the value is right. Ooh, shoot. Deshaun Baker here saying Sam Howell is going to be elite. I watched him at UNC. Okay, since I'm a Tar Heels fan. That's right. You are over in Carolina. Baker, you are over in Carolina. Okay, that's right. That's right. Plus, his college system wasn't pro-friendly in his last year. But in this air raid offense was designed check downs. Okay, right. And that's part of the reason why he had over 800 rushing yards and 11 rushing touchdowns. The offense and everything around him his last year at UNC just completely fell apart. And so, wow, but coming from a guy that's actually a Tar Heels fan and that's actually over there in Carolina, this is a great point, Deshaun Baker. And matter of fact, before I get back to some of you guys here in the chat, I think this is a perfect segue. We're still going to be talking about Sam Howell, but I wanted to bring this up, and I saw this from a Commanders fan on X. They absolutely raved about him. Here's what they had to say. Quote, Sam has a ton of moxie, plays great off schedule, and can run very effectively in the red zone and for important first downs. We'll miss him in DC. You guys got a gamer. So I have a few friends that are Commanders fans, Commander content creators, and they've echoed those same sentiments that they're going to miss Sam Howell, that they think Sam Howell's going to thrive in Seattle, that they think that Sam Howell was playing for an, at the time, toxic organization. Right? Offensive line was one of the league's worst last year. The defense was one of the league's worst. They were poorly coached, right? Or the coach staff and what they had in place as far as the players and the talent collection, it just wasn't a perfect match. Let's just say that. And so as it pertains to his surroundings and what he had around him, there just wasn't too much to work with. Sure, he had Terry McLaurin. The chemistry wasn't there with Jahan Dotson. The run game was mediocre, just around league average with Brian Robinson. The tight end room was underwhelming. And so Sam Howell, as one of the youngest quarterbacks in the National Football League last year, just didn't have a lot to work with. And yet a lot of people are knocking him for leading the league in picks. Come on, y'all. Come on, y'all. But I thought that this was something that was important to highlight because, again, a lot of Commander fans that I've interacted with, that I've talked to, some of my homies are Commander fans, they've echoed these very same sentiments. It's only really other Seahawk fans that I've seen kind of express their dismay with the Sam Howell trade. But, yo, this Sam Howell dude, lots of potential, still young, and already has starts under his belt. He's only going to get better. I think the sky is the limit for Sam Howell in Seattle. Going back to some of you guys here in the chat, Daquan, I see him as a safety net, but not much more until he proves it. We have to get back to letting guys earn the adulation. Who did he beat in the ACC? That's a valid point. That's a valid point. Shoot. Honestly, you got me there. I will say that. But he's going to have every opportunity to earn it in Seattle. I don't think the starting job is going to be handed to him because obviously Geno is the guy. But we'll see what happens. I mean, I'll be at training camp, so I'll be able to see. We'll see. Who Craze is wondering, are you guys ever going to have a roundtable again? Miss those shows weekly on Norb's channel. So someone actually asked this earlier in the chat, and I don't have a definitive answer right now, but what I can say is that stay tuned. Right now, there's nothing imminent in the works, but Norb and I, we had talked about potentially bringing that back. Well, obviously, it's on his channel, so it's not completely up to me, but I have expressed my desire in my talks with him that, we should bring those back. And so I know right now he's been real busy, but I will just say, as of right now, nothing's imminent, but stay tuned. Dennis is saying, don't have to ask me twice. Follow Steezy on Twitter. Man, thank you. Thank you, Dennis. Thank you. Truly. Thank you. Reflect the Sun in the building. Long time no see, long time no talk. I was hoping for Justin Fields with his elite athleticism and 70% accuracy in colleges last year. 68% for 3 years overall. Right, and maybe Seattle kind of balked at the fifth-year option. I know you don't necessarily have to accept the option, right? But maybe Seattle just wasn't able to fit. Because I'm not sure. You know what? I might actually have this wrong. I'm not sure what Justin Fields' cap number was for this year, but maybe Seattle didn't like what they saw from Justin Fields from an evaluation standpoint. I mean, I'm a big fan of Justin Fields. I do think that he can be a franchise quarterback in the National Football League. And personally, if I was the one running the Seattle Seahawks, if I was the one with my GM cap on, or if I took that GM cap from John Schneider, I would have traded a sixth that could turn into a fourth for Justin Fields. Surely, easily. I would have done it. It's just, I think Seattle is kind of, maybe they're considering having to pay him and not wanting to fork over that money soon. I don't know. It's just something that's been brought up. I don't know. Oh, Hamza is saying was following on Insta before finding the YouTube. Great content all around, bro. Oh, okay. So Hamza, you found me on Instagram, and then because of what I had been posting on Instagram, you ended up finding me on YouTube as well. Man, thank you, Hamza. Thank you. Rhea saying I'm gonna get some sleep. Have a blessed night, Calvin. Hey, a lot of love. Thank you so much, Rhea. I hope you have a blessed night too. Thank you for tuning in. Go Seahawks. Yes, yes, yes. Twitter kind of died for me when Pete stopped tweeting. Wait, did Pete used to tweet? Oh, okay. Yeah, Pete did tweet a little bit more back in the day. Right, right. But it's still elite for impacting games. Nothing like it. Reflect this on like Fields actually had great comparisons to Allen, Jackson, and Hurts his first 2 years. He just needed a good situation. Right. I mean, in Chicago, it wasn't until this past season in which he finally got a number one wide receiver. But even then, he had not much of a ground game, not much of an offensive line. The defense improved in the second half of last year. But I agree, Reflect the Sun. Justin Fields, the situation was never ideal in Chicago. And so I think if Pittsburgh, if they're able to draft well, and whenever Russell Wilson, whenever his time is up in Pittsburgh, I think Fields is going to thrive in Pittsburgh. I truly do. Okay, my bad. All around sports here. What are your thoughts on the Seahawks defensive line? Well, that actually is a perfect segue into another topic that I wanted to touch on real quick before I answer that all around sports. According to NFL insider Josina Anderson, and this was yesterday, the Seahawks are among a few teams that have shown preliminary interest in Randy Gregory. He also has ties to new Seahawks defensive coordinator Aden Dirty. And the reason why I wanted to bring that up now is because you just asked, and let me go back to that comment. There's a lot here. All around sports, you asked, what are your thoughts on the Seahawks defensive line? And so I think if the Seahawks were to add a Randy Gregory, I would like the Seahawks defensive line that much more. I do still think that the defensive line is an area that needs to be addressed come the NFL draft. Now, if Seattle doesn't want to address the offensive line in round one, I would hope that's the defensive line. And I would hope that it's with one of those, with one of either Jason Newton from Illinois or Byron Murphy of Texas. And so I still think that it can improve, but I like the moves that the Seahawks have made in free agency thus far, but it's far from an elite unit. And so keep adding to it. I like the fact we're going to see Nwosu, Leonard Williams, and Boye Mafia on the field together. That's a dangerous pass rush, in my opinion. One that's only going to get better. TZ so crazy. John said he wanted to give D another chance to prove himself with the new staff. Okay, what are your thoughts on that? I'm not mad at it. I mean, it's not like D. Estridge can't play football. He just has not been able to stay healthy. And for off the field, and for, how would I phrase this? And because of that off the field situation that occurred last year, that also played a part into his not being available on the football field. But I'm not mad at it. I mean, look, this was Seattle's highest drafted player back in the 2021 draft class. And so because we just haven't seen him on the field that much, it really did make sense to give him another opportunity to prove himself with the new staff. It's not like he's taking up a whole bunch of money. It's just a little over $1 million. And so that's really not much of an investment. I still think that he can be one of the primary contenders for both of the return slots, right? I'm talking about kick returner and punt returner. he definitely excelled as a returner in college. I definitely still think that there's a role for him there if he's able to make the final 53-man roster. But TZ, I'm not mad at it because, again, he just has barely been on the field. And so Seattle has always thought highly of him. Hence why they took him in the second round. Give him another opportunity, especially if the cost is minimal. Peyton Manning had 28 INTs his first year. Right, and last year was Sam Howell's first fledged year as a starter. I know his rookie year, he had one start, but as a full-time starter, last year was his first year. So the 21 INTs, while alarming, it's not the end of the world. And so I know you're not comparing 27 MHZ Peyton Manning to Sam Howell or Sam Howell to Peyton Manning, but I do get the point that you're trying to illustrate. All Around Sports is saying, I'm going to hit the sacks, DZ. Talk to you later. We'll see each other again. I can assure you that. Hey, man, well, All Around Sports, I appreciate you for taking the time to drop questions, for tuning in to the chat, and just for tuning in general. So I hope you have a great night. We got Don Ranger Power in the building. Hello, Steezy, and hello all, and happy Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Day. Hope everyone is well. Actually, I didn't know that. Today's TMNT Day? That's dope. Well, to everybody that celebrates, I mean, happy TMNT Day. I was definitely a huge TMNT fan growing up, and so talk about a fun fact, man. Thank you. We got Sion Adobo in the building saying Fields' cap hit this year is $4 million, next year $25 million under that fifth-year option. Thank you for providing that info. And man, Sion Adobo, I appreciate you for taking the time to tune in, man. I hope you're having a great night. You would have 1 year to evaluate Fields and decide if you were going to take the fifth-year option. Not worth it, especially when he won't beat that Geno, so you can't evaluate him anyway. Yeah, it's crazy because I feel like there's just so much variance when it comes to evaluating Justin Fields. I've seen fans and I've seen analysts talk about how they believe that he could be a franchise quarterback, but then I've also seen a good amount of fans and even Chicago Bear fans just kind of give up on Justin Fields altogether. And so I don't know, but he's a Pittsburgh Steeler now, and so I don't think we need to spend too much time talking about it, Justin Fields, but I definitely would have loved to see him in Seattle. I wouldn't have paid him right away, obviously, but it definitely would have been nice to see him with weapons, with an improving offensive line, with a better coaching situation, with the run game. I don't know. But we have a Reflect the Sun here disputing what Sion Adobo was saying. You could sure evaluate Fields at practice and in the learning of the offense. $25 million for Fields would be less than Geno the year after he proves himself. All right, well, I'm going to let y'all go back and forth there. But Dennis is saying makes me miss Bobby. Bobby was a big Turtles fan. Actually was in one of their movies. Right. He voiced, I forgot who it was, but in one of the latest TMNT movies, Bobby Wagner was the voice actor for one of the roles there. And so, yeah, that's man. Okay, so we have a lot of TMNT fans here in the chat, man. That's cool. That's cool. We got East Coast Gridiron in the building saying, what up, brother? Man, how are you doing, my brother? I hope you're having a great, blessed night. Appreciate you for taking the time to hop on the stream, hop on the show. We still need to chop it up, bro, because when I do have that draft show, probably in the next, I don't know, 2-3 weeks, I definitely want you on. I need you on. So hit my line, but hey, East Coast Gridiron, man. Thank you for tuning in, brother. Dennis is saying Seattle got hit with a huge dose of pollen. It's been messing with people who are not even allergic. Right? Yo, I don't know if you guys are able to tell, but my nose has been congested all week long, all day long. I've been blowing my nose, scratching my eyes, sneezing like crazy. I'm not even usually, and like you said, Dennis, I don't really have allergies like that. But yeah, with all this pollen, with the weather change, I mean, I'm just glad that, these allergies aren't affecting me as I thought it would. And I'm able to put out, a show for you guys, a good quality show. But yeah, it's been a lot of people around here in Seattle have been dealing with these allergies. And I ain't gonna lie, it hasn't been very pleasant. I've been blowing my nose all day, but enjoying this. I'm just glad that I have yet to blow my nose on this stream. For real. But we all Reflect the Sun saying, I think Fields' talent is worth a shot. Just 9 INTs versus 21 for Howell. Also, under the point system, it did amount to giving up a third for Howell. Well, okay, and there's going to be different opinions on this, but I saw a calculator, and let me just pull this up real quick. According to the Fitzgerald-Spielberger chart, the Seahawks really only gave up the equivalent of a 7th-round pick. Now, I did have someone on Instagram dispute that and say, okay, well, it actually equated to a 5th-round pick. Regardless, Seattle gave up the equivalent of a day 3 pick for Sam Howell. I have seen some people say, yeah, according to the point system, you're giving up a 3rd. But again, Seattle had 2 3rds, and their 2nd 3rd, they moved down 20-something spots. And then your 5th, you're moving down another 20-something spots into the 6th. So you still have the same amount of draft picks. Look, maybe Seattle just wasn't enamored, wasn't in love with the options. Maybe they didn't have a whole bunch of guys in that area of the draft in which they were targeting guys, and so maybe they were cool. And again, it also eliminates and alleviates the need to have to draft a quarterback in this year's draft by bringing on a Sam Howell. I'm not saying that the future of the position is now secured, but again, it eliminates the need to have to reach for a quarterback, especially if the value isn't there. All right, bet that, bro. Bet that. Daquan Ingram, Peyton Manning would have loved to have been drafted a team with McLaurin, Thomas, Dotson, a defensive Pro Bowlers, and a run game. I mean, look, Daquan, look, I see what you're saying, but again, like I talked about earlier, that defense, yeah, they had Pro Bowlers, but that defense was arguably the worst in football last year. They couldn't stop a cold, for crying out loud. Against the pass, they were one of the worst. Against the run, maybe they were a little better. But defensively, they were one of the worst in football. Offensive line, one of the worst in football. Running game was okay. Sam Howell, that chemistry, and him and Jahan Dotson, they just never really clicked. The tight end room was old. And so, yes, he had Terry McLaurin. But aside from that, there just wasn't very many positives in Washington. Nolan is saying John Schneider is the king of patience. Wait till Justin gets cut and needs to prove himself. Would compete with Howell on the cheap. Always compete. Well, I don't know if after trading for him that Fields would be cut anytime soon, but I agree with you there, Nolan. I mean, he is the king of patience, and yeah, it's all the mantra is always about competing. So there you go. We got TZ So Crazy saying Charles Cross has been putting in a lot of great work. I could see him top 5 in the next 2 years. I could see him top 5 before the end of next year. Truly, the potential has always been there. He was drafted in the top 10 for a reason, and I've seen enough flashes to make that declaration. I'm gonna say that. Reflect the sun, fair enough, Steezy. East Coast Gridiron did a great review of Michael Pratt, so I was also hoping he might have worked out. Yeah, I mean, Michael Pratt, again, I think it's still an option on day 3, potentially, if the value is there. Look, again, I don't think Sam Howell, his presence, it doesn't preclude Seattle from still drafting a quarterback. It just means that Seattle doesn't have to if they deem that the value is not enough. But hey, East Coast Gridiron does a great review of any and everything college, all college players. And so for those of you guys that are wanting to study prospects for the upcoming NFL draft, at East Coast Gridiron right here, be sure to give him a follow, man. Give him a subscribe. Tune into his stuff. He puts out a bunch of great content, and he's a hard worker, man. So definitely show him some love. I didn't know this. Dennis is saying Grubb wanted Howell. We saw what Grubb did with a guy with some dings, but a golden arm. Interesting. I really wanted Penix Jr., but love Geno too. Okay, Adobe here spins some facts. Commanders had lowest amount of rush attempts in the league last year. O-line ranked 32 out of 32. Seattle second lowest with 28th ranked pass protection. Okay. Penix had the injury history, but that arm. Grubb took it and went nuts. This is a great point. Great point. And we have a super sticker from Reflect the Sun. I appreciate the donation. Super sticker. And man, Reflect the Sun, you've been a supporter of mine for a long time now, and just always seeing your name in the chat, it definitely puts a smile on my face. Like truly, whenever I see people just doubling back, and whenever I see the same faces and the same names in the chat, it really lights up. It really lights me up a lot more than you guys know. And so I really appreciate the super chat / super sticker / donation / love and support. It really means more than you know from the bottom of my heart. So thank you so much, Reflected Sun. Thank you. It was a big issue when Grub recruited him. Not as big now, but it'll always be mentioned. Thanks, Steezy. Hey, always, brother, always. All right, y'all. Just a couple more things here before I do wrap up the show. I'm trying to wrap this up within the next, let's say, 10 minutes or so. Won't be able to get to everything that I had planned here. But I did have a couple questions that I wanted to point out, and this is via Instagram at Roan, if you're tuned in right now, this is for you, brother. But Roan, and this is via Instagram, is asking, is the Howell-Geno situation similar to Russ and Fields in Pittsburgh? I think it's very similar. In Pittsburgh, we know that Russ is locked in until he's not locked in as the starter. I know all the reports that have been flying are about, oh, Fields is going to be the backup. He's not competing for the job. But obviously, if an injury were to take place or if the offense were to stall, I could definitely see Justin Fields coming in. And right now, in Seattle, Geno Smith is the guy until he's not, those are John Schneider's words, not mine. But if he were to falter, if the Seahawks were to go through some bad times this upcoming season, I could see Howell coming in. But I also think that these situations are similar in where these guys aren't expected to take the starting jobs, but they are expected to compete and to hopefully be the future. So, Ron, I hope you tuned in. If not, I hope you do tune in and watch this later, but I did get to your question. Rona actually is asking another question, and I think this is a great question. But Ron Jacobson is asking, who on our defense gains the most from change in the coach staff? I think this is a great question right here. And to answer, I'm going to have to say Boye Mafe. I just think with the Boye Mafe, he has superstar potential. And with him on the field, I just think that, with what Mike McDonald is able to do with everybody else on the field, right? He's a genius at disguising stuff. You don't know who's going to drop back. You don't know who's going to get after the quarterback. Boye Mafe has already shown flashes in coverage. And so going into year 3, he's always been raw. But now that he's continuing to add technique, he's continuing to polish his technique is what I mean to say. With a defensive genius at the helm, with more talented players around him, I think Boye Mafe is going to gain the most from the change in the coaching staff. Great question, Ron. Great question. Steezy always a super nice guy, man. Hey, man, I'm just trying to be myself, man. But I appreciate that, brother. Thank you. Right on, Steezy. You're right. East Coast Gridiron do a great job. Cool cats. And East Coast Gridiron, we've worked together once or twice in the past. It has been a while, but definitely expect to collab here soon within the next couple of months. Actually, next couple of weeks is what I mean to say. Okay, Ron is in the building. Appreciate you, Steezy. Glad I tuned in. Hey, Ron, man. So I wasn't sure if you was tuned in, but Ron, I hope I answered your questions. I hope I answered them. I answered them to the best of my ability, but I hope you're happy with that. But yeah, no, Ron, shoot. Thank you for tuning in, brother. Man, I didn't think you were tuned in right now, but man, that's cool. That's cool. Thank you. We got Timothy Daniels in the building. I love the move with Howell. Taking a mini Josh Allen guy and having him learn efficiency is what we want. If we don't go for a quarterback, then primarily focus on the line. Everything that I've been saying. So well said, Timothy Daniels. Well said. Jody Vera saying facts. TZ so crazy. We got a lot of dogs in our secondary to pair with Spoon, right? The Reek. I still have faith in Kobe Bryant, Michael Jackson, Artie Burns was re-signed, Jarek Reed. I think the future is bright. Julian Love, Rayshawn Jenkins. Nothing but dogs. Boy, you're gonna eat this year. Oh, most definitely. He's gonna eat. He gonna eat. Before I do wrap up the show, though, you guys, I wanted to provide you guys with an update. Let me pull this up real quick. I wanted to give you guys a cap space update. And I wanted to give you guys an update from both Spotrac and Over the Cap. But as of today, and maybe this isn't the most up to date just because it doesn't take into account some of Seattle's newest free agent signings. But according to Spotrac, the Seahawks rank 16th in the NFL in salary cap space with $17.6 million. Now, there's a small discrepancy here, but according to Over the Cap, the Seahawks rank 16th, also 16th in the NFL in salary cap space. But Over the Cap is saying that the Seahawks have about $16.2 million. And so I thought it would be important to give you guys a salary cap update just because Seattle has made a plethora of signings in the last couple of days. And so I definitely thought that it'd be important to at least point this out. Seattle does need about, 8 to 9 million, maybe 10 million for the incoming draft class. And so as far as effective salary cap space goes, Seattle has under $7 million to spend. And so obviously that's not a whole bunch to work with. Thankfully, I only have one guy on my Seahawks free agent wish list remaining, and that's Isaiah Simmons. I don't think that he's going to take up a huge chunk of salary cap space if he were to be signed by the Seattle Seahawks. But again, I just thought I'd give you guys an update on the salary cap as it pertains to the Seahawks. And to rank 16th in the NFL, despite the fact that you're top 10 as far as dead money with over $30 million, I think it's a pretty decent position to be in. And so, again, I know these numbers are a little different, but I think it's safe to say that as far as effective salary cap space goes, the Seahawks have less than $10 million to work with. And so if you're going to be wondering why the Seahawks can't sign this guy or that guy, or they couldn't sign that guy, it's because that cap space has been slowly but surely dwindling. We've been live for almost 2 hours though. And it is about time to start wrapping up this show. There were a couple of topics that I wasn't able to get to tonight, and I apologize for that. But to everybody that tuned in, to everybody that followed me, to everybody that subscribed, to all my new supporters, man, from the bottom of my heart, I can't express my gratitude enough. Just so much thanks, so much gratitude. And I'm just so thankful to have a bunch of Seahawks fans and just a bunch of football fans tuning in to my shows, supporting and following my work. It really means more than you guys know. And it's really you guys that drive a lot of this and that really keep me going, truly. I mean, if I didn't have you guys showing me this much love and showing me this much support, I'm not going to sit here and say that I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing, but it definitely helps keep gives me more reason, right? And so, man, before I wrap this up though, I do want to just get back to some of you guys here in the chat before I call it a wrap. And I hope everyone has a blessed night, man, for real. Adobo is saying probably gonna have to restructure someone before the draft. We spending like the Niners and the Rams this offseason. Yeah, I mean, Seattle's already restructured Tyler Lockett. Seattle obviously released Quandre and released Jamal. And I don't know off the top of my head right now who Seattle could potentially restructure. Maybe a DK Metcalf? I don't know. But Adobo, I'm with you, though. I think that if Seattle were to sign, or if they wanted to bring on a couple more free agents, they're probably going to have to restructure another contract. We'll see what happens there. Still a lot of time. Dennis is saying, thanks for the stream, Steezy. Keep up the good work. Man, Dennis, your support, as I was saying, it means a lot more than you know. So I appreciate that, truly. I will keep up the good work. Thank you. Daquan is saying, extend DK. I wouldn't be opposed to that either. I think DK is going to thrive under Ryan Grubb. And so, Seattle, if y'all listening, man, let's get to that. Extend DK. To everybody that donated, Nolan, Reflect the Sun, you guys know that super chats just, they make my heart so much more warm than it already is. And so big shout out to you guys for donating and for just tuning in. And you guys make me feel so loved, man, truly. But if you guys are interested in hopping on the show, if you guys want to hop on as a guest, send me a DM. Send me a DM on Instagram or on Twitter. And let's talk. Let's talk. Tacktown Boy 253 saying restructure DK and extend Julian Love. That would free us some cash. Or extend both. But good ideas there for sure. Man, I don't want to have to go, y'all. I really don't want to have to go. There's still so many of you guys tuned in here. But you guys know I love you guys. You guys know I love you guys. If you have questions that you want me to answer on the next stream, again, DM me. And we'll go from there. We'll go from there. A couple more comments here, though, before I wrap it up. When can you do a rollout of identifying team needs? Next show. So I'm thinking, if not this coming Friday, then next week, either Monday or Tuesday. Daquan, I appreciate that. Matter of fact, let me take a picture of this real quick, though, because I don't want to. Actually, I can take a picture afterward, but that'll definitely be a topic on the next show. So I appreciate that, Daquan. Favre had 24 INTs and 19 touchdowns in his second year. It took him another 4 years to win the Super Bowl in 1997 with 35 touchdowns and 16 INTs. Talk about a fun fact. DK's contract is up after 2025, so that wouldn't be a bad idea. Right. Daquan is saying, appreciate the great work you are doing. Well, I appreciate the support, the great support that all you guys are providing to me. And, man, one more time, though, if you guys are not already subscribed, we did just hit 4,000, and now we're on the road to 10K. So tell a friend to tell a friend. If you have Seahawk fans, friends, family around you, definitely be sure to shoot them my channel at Steezy A Smith. Daquan, thank you again. But here's the handle at Steezy A Smith. And then for daily content on Instagram at Steezy A Smith TV and on X at Steezy A Smith. As always, all glory to my Lord and Savior, Lord Jesus Christ. Hallelujah. Without him, I would not be here doing any of this. So I hope you guys all have a blessed night. Have a great night. All glory to God for real. And Steezy's out, baby. Y'all have a blessed night for real. Again, this video is going to be dedicated to Mr. Todd Nas. While that concludes this video, we have loads of other content. You don't have to stop watching there. Other content on our channel homepage, as well as our social media platforms. And again, don't forget to hit that subscribe button for us. Tell a friend and tell a friend. Nothing but love, and Steezy out.